fair listeners, welcome to... Hold on. You look so proud of yourself.
You're listening to the Pithy Chronicle. History with a bite. I'm Caroline.
And I'm Erika. And we bring you history's dirtiest deeds, dripping with sarcasm.
Are you hungry yet?
Hark, fair listeners! Welcome to the Pithy Chronicle, where we dish out the juiciest dirt from the of history.
It's the annals.
From the annals of history. I'm Caroline.
And I'm Erika.
And she's in the doghouse.
I am in the doghouse because this is our second time recording this episode because I didn't record it the first time.
No,
so
we talked at each other for no apparent reason.
Yeah. But now this should be better.
We're ready.
We're spilling the medieval tea on none other than Eleanor of Aquitaine. Grab your goblets, folks. It's gonna be scandalous. But before we dive into the medieval madness, let's tidy up the castle with some scandalously delicious housekeeping. Don't touch that remote or dial or pause button. You won't want to miss this roller coaster.
Housekeeping it is, although I'm positive that Eleanor of Aquitaine never did any of her own housekeeping. Please remember that we are anywhere that you can get your podcast. Subscribe, press that like button, follow us, give us a 5-star review. All of those things really help people to find us so that we can reach more people with our witty commentary about how women have been mistreated by historians for centuries.
Anyway, we digress.
What?
So, Caroline, you know, in dating and in football, the season of sports and love,
What?
there are red flags.
Oh, yes, there are red flags.
To be very honest about this episode, we talk about a lot of folks and their really terrible life choices.
Yeah?
So I need you to referee this episode. I need you to throw red flags when you see them.
Okay, I'm ready.
And I know that you might be thinking right now,
How many could there be?
how many could there possibly be?
I'm gonna say 5.
Okay, I'll say 7.
Let's see how we do.
To understand Eleanor, we have to understand her family. Meet her grandfather, William IX of Aquitaine, the multitasking crusader, troubadour, and master of romantic escapades. Move over, Brad Pitt. This guy was the original heartthrob of the medieval ages.
Really? Brad Pitt is your go-to still?
I mean, who else? Who would you be?
George Clooney?
Isn't he older than Brad Pitt?
Yeah, but he aged better, like a friend
Oh,
of mine.
he did age better.
He
I will give you
aged
that.
really well.
At the tender age of 15, William inherited the title, Duke of Aquitaine. Just one of the most powerful, wealthy duchies around. And what does a wealthy teenager do?
I bet he went and had some prostitutes and then got married.
Well, he definitely got hitched.
I think we can go with both, considering what I've heard about him. Philippa
of Toulouse became the lucky or unlucky lady, however you choose to look at it, in 1094. But hey, some gossip mongers claim that there may have been a mystery wife or paramour before her, but we'll just stick to the super official story.
There were plenty of unofficial stories and children.
Yes. He and Philippa of Aquitaine lived happily ever after. The end.
No.
Not, yeah. Fast forward to the drama, the faint-hearted crusade. William, unsurprisingly, was not a military genius, but who needs that when you can serenade your way through battles or underwear? Unfortunately, his musical prowess did not save him from the Seljuk Turks. I'm shocked. Obviously, so are you.
Yeah.
And he barely made it out with a handful of dudes. Literally 6. Talk about a lyrical defeat.
6 dudes from his entire crusade.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised he's one of them, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
He just really was not made of military stuff.
No, and you know who was with him on this crusade that also was not made of military stuff?
Stephen of Blois.
Yes, Stephen of Blois.
The Blois.
Husband of Adela and father of King Stephen.
King of England.
Now, back in Aquitaine, William was giving the church a headache bigger than a medieval hangover. Twice excommunicated.
Yeah.
Red flag! Yeah.
Was he recommunicated and then excommunicated again? Is that a thing?
That's a thing,
He's
apparently.
out, he's in, he's out. Okay.
He has a lot of experience in the in and outs, but anyway.
Actually, that's not the worst excommunication count we've seen. Was it Henry the IV?
Yeah, the not exactly
The
home
not
rule.
so real HRE, yeah.
Yeah. I think he was, what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, at least. There have been a number of popes with multiples as well.
So the first time was over tax rights of the church. And it was a funny story, really, that the bishop was reading the excommunication when William threatened him by sword, saying he had to give him absolution before he read it, essentially meaning if he died, like, it's still fine. Absolve me from this excommunication. Well, at sword point, the bishop did, and then finished quickly, and then once the sword was removed from his neck, says, ha 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 ha, I actually didn't do it, it wasn't valid. And so when the bishop lays his neck out for the Duke of Aquitaine to strike, the Duke is said to have changed his mind and say, I don't love you enough to send you to paradise.
Wow.
I mean, it's a medieval clapback.
Okay.
Is it hot and spicy? Not now, but was it then?
It's a burn. It's a medieval burn.
It's a burn.
A sword burn. Yeah, totally.
Sword burn.
Like a
So-
rope burn.
Maybe? Duke William's second excommunication was a true masterpiece of romantic misadventure. Our dashing Duke sets his sights on the forbidden fruit. The Vicomtesse Dangereuse, a vassal's wife. Forget courtly love, William decided to take it up a notch and straight up abduct her.
Oh, I thought you were going to say marry her.
No.
Abduct her.
Abduct her.
Red flag! Flag on the play. He abducted her?
Shockingly, she didn't seem too bothered by it. I mean, love conquers all, right?
Had they met before and she knew this was a better situation than the original? I mean, he's a duke and the other guy was
I mean,
a vassal.
a vassal, but he was still a viscount.
That's a good point. He was still a viscount.
So he proudly paraded La Dangereuse as his lover, keeping her as, quote, a willing prisoner in
Red flag! Red flag!
And it gets even more storybook.
Okay, so we're going Stockholm Syndrome.
He kept her in a tower, his castle at Poitiers. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Hold on, though. His official wifey, because remember, he's
Oh,
still
there's
married.
a wife? I thought she was dead.
No, Philippa of Toulouse is still around.
Just kicking it.
And she was not exactly thrilled with the arrangement.
Nobody wants a prisoner in their house. That's a really awkward situation.
And also a prisoner that he is actively having converse
Honestly,
with.
it sounds like that would be fine to Philippa. Once your husband becomes a kidnapper, do you really have much interest in the man?
No, but I would be pretty upset. Like,
Okay.
was I not enough? You had to go kidnap somebody?
Or thank God I don't have to play those games anymore.
Yeah, that too.
Red flag.
Desperate times, desperate measures, and Philippa appealed to anyone who would listen. Unfortunately, being the overlord and the duke and all, he was untouchable. No knight in shining armor dared to challenge the duke's romantic escapades, no knight in shining armor for Philippa. So what's a heartbroken, humiliated lady to do?
To the nunnery!
Philippa sought solace in the nunnery, where she met her untimely demise.
Oh no.
And we know as well as anyone, medieval nuns couldn't escape the drama.
No.
Remember how I told you at the beginning of the episode, there may have been wifey number 1, or at least an unofficially official, like, paramour?
Yes.
She's in the nunnery with Philippa.
No, she is
She
not.
is. The dates match up.
Oh no! To be a fly on the wall.
So there's another plot twist.
Ooh.
Because Philippa was still alive, La Dangereuse couldn't upgrade her status to Duchess because, well, she was technically still married to the Viscount of Châteauroux.
She'll have to suffer through with the Viscountess.
Yes, and being a willing prisoner in the tower.
Oh yeah.
The Pope was not one to miss a good soap opera. He demanded that William return the Viscountess to her lawful husband. Did he comply? Nope.
Red flag!
So
Red
another communication for our romantic rebel.
Oh my god.
So how did Duke William get back into the church's good graces?
Money.
A few generous contributions. Nothing says, I'm sorry for my love triangle, like a big fat donation to the church's coffers.
I mean, they did like their statues.
They're really nice,
Just
too.
saying.
And their gold chalices.
Maybe he bought a relic.
Who knows?
That could be good.
That could
Yes.
be good.
Okay.
We've now gone through most of the tangled love affairs of William IX. So let's move on to his son, William X of Aquitaine.
Ah, daddy.
He had this lady love, Emma, the daughter of the Vicomte Aymar of Limoges. She was his lover prior to his arranged marriage to his stepsister.
Red flag!
Yep.
What?
The plot thickens when Emma gets abducted! They need her out of there, so they just abduct her.
So his family abducts her to get her out of the way of the arranged marriage?
I don't know that they do the abducting, but they certainly probably arranged it.
Red flag! Although Dad's clearly a pro, so it was probably a better than average abduction.
Yeah, I mean, he's done it before. Probably very smooth, very well thought out.
Civilized.
And then instead of a dreamy wedding with William, she finds herself reluctantly wed to the Duke of Angoulême around 1120 when she was just 17.
They just gave her to somebody else?
Yeah, he's still a duke.
Red flag.
He's still a duke.
Yeah, he is still a duke.
Not that this is okay. This is absolutely not okay. I would like to very clearly say this. This is not okay. But if this is gonna happen...
They did not just stick her in disgrace.
Right.
They gave her a duke. They gave her the opportunity at a new life.
The Angoulêmes are a very powerful house, and they also have, I think, 2 women who marry into the English Angevin line later on.
Still an abduction.
And just when you thought the drama could not get any better, William the 10th played matchmaker, marrying his heir, also named William because, of course, originality is overrated,
Always.
to Eleanor of Aquitaine,
Ooh.
the daughter of La Dangereuse, and her original husband.
That is so gross.
Talk about keeping it in the family.
So he married the prisoner's daughter?
His,
Yes.
yes.
Prisoner, mistress, stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Married his stepsister.
Oh.
And I recognize that they share no DNA,
It's very cruel intentions.
but incest adjacent.
Oh, you just want brownie points because you found incest? Were they at least happy?
It was at least less dramatic, which, my God, after William the Ninth, less dramatic is all you can really hope for.
And they only have one Christmas celebration they have to go to.
Yep. They did have 2 daughters and a son. Now, William did have 2 liaisons that resorted into boys out of wedlock.
Standard for the time.
Pretty standard for the time. He acknowledged that they were his, but they were never in line for the succession, never considered as politically viable.
Okay.
In 1127, the vibrant Duke William IX of Aquitaine, and vibrant is generous, passed away, leaving his son William X to inherit the expansive duchy, which was 25% of all of France at that point.
More, as I recall, than the actual French monarchs.
Yes. The family held sway from the formidable Poitiers castle, with the occasional retreats to the seaside fortresses like Talmont and in the verdant valleys of Bordeaux. Tragedy, unfortunately, just 3 years later, struck in 1130, casting a shadow over the once lively court. Eleanor of Aquitaine, age 27, and young William Aigrette, just 4 years old, succumbed to an unknown fate.
Aww.
Medical historians have likely linked it to tuberculosis, but that's conjecture.
It's so hard to say.
So, widowed and facing the somber prospect of an uncertain succession, William turned to his 2 daughters, Eleanor, which means literally the other Eleanor.
No.
Not a joke.
No. And I was going to say Eleanor is such
Yes.
a crap name. But Eleanor, I mean, that's a classic.
It is a classic. It just means the other Eleanor.
Oh, so many jokes.
And the second daughter, Petranilla.
Red flag! Eleanor at least sounds pretty, even if the naming is a little suspicious. But Petranilla? Talk about a petulant name.
I know. I kind of like it.
It sounds like citronella. It sounds like the stuff that keeps mosquitoes
Oh,
away.
God.
Which, like,
No, I
super
don't
convenient,
like
but probably not the name you want.
it. No.
Now I'm only going to be able to think of her as citronella.
The whispers of a possible female succession lingered, and William made a very unconventional decision for the time to appoint Eleanor as his heir, the first woman to independently rule Aquitaine.
Opposite of red flag.
Yes,
Green flag!
green flag!
Green flag! Woohoo!
Eleanor and Petranilla, companions in grief, grew up as close as sisters could, confidants to one another, and their social circle was unfortunately limited to a handful of ladies-in-waiting who preferred gossip over the pursuits of that of spirited sisters. With Eleanor gone, there was really no one else. There was no first lady of the court. It was much more of a masculine feel in the beginning because there wasn't anyone to facilitate that. it didn't have a woman's touch. Do you know what I mean?
There were no masks, no balls.
Probably a little more bawdy, a little more scandalous, or a little more coarse.
And the Aquitanian court was already on the edge of what was appropriate
Yeah.
and what was bawdy at the time.
Absolutely.
Grandpa there liked to write raunchy poetry. A
Yeah,
lot of
and
it.
of course, they all survived up until the Victorian era. So again, thank you, Victorians, for being so marvelously, awfully prudish. But also being equally as skanky in your downtime.
What is the piercing? The
Prince Albert.
Mm-hmm.
William X, akin to his famous forebearer, continued the legacy of fostering literature, music, and art. Eleanor, surrounded by artistic influences at court, developed a passion for the arts. So under her father's guidance, she not only blossomed into a skilled poet and writer, but also received a comprehensive education in preparation for her future role as the Duchess of Aquitaine. She probably got much more free reign because her father oversaw her education, which is such an oxymoron for the time.
Green flag. This man is getting a lot of green flags, except for the stepsister marriage.
Which he didn't have much of a choice in, let's be honest.
His beloved was abducted, so okay.
Yeah, but because he didn't know how a woman was supposed to be educated, he probably was like, all right, let's just do it however I did it. Culture and learning were a family tradition for Eleanor, who received the best possible education of the time, much more in the way of the Byzantine courts. She was taught mathematics, astronomy, history, literature, Latin, music. She also learned arts and crafts like embroidery and needlepoint, sewing and spinning. And like any daughter of nobility, she danced and sang, as well as rode horses and went hunting.
Woo.
And Eleanor would have been raised to be a nobleman's wife and was probably expected to support a husband in ruling in Uxorus. So, right
of the daughter.
By Eleanor's right,
so
yes.
He didn't anticipate that she would be doing this as the main leader. She would be a support.
I don't know that we can really say.
That's true. How can we know?
But I think he wanted her to be prepared to do it so in her own right or in Uxorus, having a husband help by right.
Green flag! Green flag!
The father-daughter bond deepened as they traveled the duchy together, forcing a strong connection. They would go on the equivalent of like a royal progress, either to pick tithes up or see how things are going and really learn the land. It just seems like he was a pretty consummate father.
Green flags everywhere.
However,
red flag.
The splendors of William X's court had drawn the church's disapproval, because of course you can be more splendid than the King of France, but not the Pope.
Sure.
There was a rupture in relations in the 1130s, so seeking redemption for being fly AF, William embarked on a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela in 1137, vowing humility. And he probably knew that his time was coming to an end because he was pretty sick, but it's unclear that Eleanor knew that when he left, this would probably be the last time she saw her father.
I'd always read that she was unaware.
I think that's pretty understandable.
I do too. She's only 15?
Yeah.
Give or take.
So let's take a little bit of a sidestep and talk about the chessboard of the European monarchies right now. Within France, the Capetian dynasty held sway over the Ile-de-France region, guided by Louis VI, also known as Louis the Fat. Yeah.
Red flag.
Like, how big must you be in that time when most people, even nobles, were malnourished?
I wonder if it was more of a compliment then than it is now.
If they're fat, they're obviously very successful and have a lot of food.
Wealthy and successful. Lots of downtime. So,
very interesting.
Maybe.
France was a patchwork of powerful duchies and counties and was a realm where influence was a delicate balance. Normandy, Brittany, and the Aquitaine stood as formidable dukedoms and either rivaled or surpassed, in Aquitaine's account, the Capetian dynasty's own possession. The Duchy of Aquitaine, in particular, emerged as one of the largest, wealthiest, and most influential territories, not only because of their wealth, but because of their sheer square footage. And if you've got Normandy, and then Brittany, also sizable, plus all of the smaller ones.
No one really had a majority,
Yeah.
but they had Paris.
The a seat of government, but it wasn't what we think of when we think Paris. That
No.
didn't come around until the Louis.
So they had, like, the place where the governing was happening.
Adding more intrigue to this, we've got Billy the Conque, who had ascended to the English throne in 1066. And of course, he was the Duke of Normandy as well as King of England. So that started this power imbalance between England and France.
It's awkward.
I'm your equal, but I'm also your vassal.
Sticky.
The conquest really did start this tug of war for control over land on both sides of the channel that set the stage for centuries of bloody conflict among ambitious houses. In a strategic move right before he died, William X named Louis the Fat as the guardian for Eleanor and Petranilla. And the shrewd Capetian king seized the opportunity to consolidate power, swiftly announcing Eleanor's betrothal to his son, the future Louis VII.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag.
She had essentially no time to court, no time to get to know him.
Or even come to terms with the situation.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
her dad was alive and well, and she was still in her teens, and then all of a sudden, he's dead, and she's getting married to the French prince.
Yeah, which, who's to say what she felt, but I think that it's safe to say that, of course, sad dad's dead. But Prince?
Yeah.
Maybe not a bad thing. At this point, she's not met him.
There is a very good chance that this was exciting for her.
Who Eleanor was, she probably felt like she could make an impact, or she could do something good on a larger scale, or if not good, at least interesting.
Okay, fair enough.
This young couple's union in 1137 marked a pivotal moment, intertwining the fates of the Aquitaine and the Capetian dynasty in a marriage that would shape the course of history and should have solidified France's hold over their territories.
Should have. Red flag.
Let's take a look at some more marital drama that led to the compatibility issues, to put it nicely, for this marriage. Because if you thought Eleanor's family was bad, Caroline, then pull up your britches, because
Mine weren't down.
are...
Did you mean chair? I swear I wore pants.
It's always what you say, but never what we know. Pull up your britches, because you've already heard part of Louis' story. And guess where it starts, Caroline?
I don't know. Paris?
It's been my battle cry this entire season.
The
And part of last
Council
season.
of Piacenza.
Yes! You're right!
Like a Kevin Bacon situation for you, and you just love how everything ties back to this, I'm not gonna say stupid, but to
it
this
ties back so
minimally
well.
important.
So that's what you think. But that's what you think. You're like, who gives a crap about the Council of Piacenza? Nobody. But it is unreal. The Council of Piacenza, in my opinion, is what starts the Crusades and the movement of courtly love, and it all has the church's backing, and we'll get into that another time. It is not for this one.
Okay.
But
Wow.
without further ado,
Oh
I
my.
got to thank Elizabeth Chadwick for this really succinct summary of this absolute wild love hexagon thing.
Hexagon.
I didn't count the points, that was just my
Okay.
quote. It all starts out well with Louis' grandfather, Philip, who married one named Bertha, daughter of the Count of Holland. With Bertha, he had 5 children, including Louis' father, Louis the Fat. However, the cracks then began to show, and Philip cast his eye upon a lady called Bertrade de Montfort, who unfortunately happened at the time to be married to Fulk IV of Anjou, who had by this point been married several times himself and was working his way through an assortment of wives.
Is this the same folk that we encountered on the First Crusade?
Yes, and in Melusine.
Well, then I'm gonna just say red flag right off the bat.
Fulk of Anjou is literally Fulk the Red,
Temperamental.
quite literally a walking red flag.
Love it.
The chronicler John of Marmontier said of the match with Bertrade, quote, "The lecherous Fulk then fell passionately in love with the sister of Amory de Montfort, whom no good man ever praised save for her beauty," unquote.
That's such a burn.
It is the most, backhanded compliment, girl, you pretty, but you ain't got nothing else going on.
Oh, that's rough.
Philip, claiming that Bertha was too fat, he dumped her and abducted.
Well, that would explain Louis the Fat's genetics, though.
Yeah, it would. Claiming his first wife Bertha was too fat, Philip dumped her and abducted and bigamously married Bertrade.
What is with the abductions?
Yeah.
Ask nicely.
He was excommunicated for this, first by the Archbishop of Lyon and then by Pope Urban. And so that was when it took place. The Council of Piacenza, they came to work it out because basically Fulk was like, yeah, man, I've already got my heir and a spare. I just want to be able to marry and do whoever I want to. You can have her.
I remember he was like, I really am not bothered. I've been married so many times. I don't really care.
I really don't care.
Red flag. Sad flag.
I told you.
Sad flag.
He's a walking red flag. And now Philip, he just was so mean about Bertha. He called her fat, that he couldn't consummate things with her, even though he already had like 5 kids because she had gotten so fat. Probably, I don't know, from the 5 kids.
Had 9 kids, yeah.
Also said that she had a horse face. Yeah.
It's okay, SJP.
The ban, however, on Philip's excommunication was lifted on several occasions when Philip promised that he would put Bertrade aside, but of course that was all empty sincerity. He was not going to dump her.
He was going to keep the side piece that he'd been generously given by her husband.
Yeah!
That's right. I said that.
That came out of your mouth.
And am I wrong?
No, you're not. Rather like William IX's comment that, quote, hair would grow on a bald prelate's head before he gave up La Dangereuse de Châteauroux, so Philip was too attached to the woman he had snatched from the Count of Anjou to let excommunication get in the way of the relationship. Even the church eventually gave up, unquote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Red flag for the Pope.
Yeah.
You can't give up on these sorts of things. You can't go around abducting women just because you're powerful.
I mean, it kind of seems like she was also in the willing prisoner situation.
Clearly runs in the family.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is uncomfortably psychotic behavior repeated in both lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Red flag.
Orderic Vitalis says of Bertrade that she was keen for one of the 2 sons she had born to Philip to succeed him, and sent a letter to Henry I asking him to arrest her stepson, Louis. Now, why Henry I of England would be involved isn't explained. Orderic claimed, too, that Bertrade tried to kill her stepson Louis, first through the arts of sorcery, and then through poison.
Oh my.
Her attempts, if there's any truth to them, did not work because Louis succeeded his father in 1108, and Bertrade did not die until 1117. So 9 years is a bit of a long time to let somebody who allegedly attempted to kill you live.
Especially when they are living in the same castle. I mean, it's a castle, but it's still the same dwelling.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like sour grapes, or like...
Orderic being Orderic.
Very Orderic-y.
William of Malmesbury tells us that, quote, Bertrade is still young and beautiful, took the veil at Fontevraud Abbey, always charming to men, pleasing to God, and like an angel, unquote.
Wow.
So she's there with Philippa of Toulouse and the unnamed Countess of Champagne, and what an enclave that must have been.
That's so weird.
It's so weird.
But they all could have held their great-grandbaby together. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got that right.
Bertrade's son from her first marriage was Fulk V, the father of Geoffrey le Bel and grandfather of Henry II.
Red flag.
Yeah. She had a king through her line with Fulk, and then with Philip, she was step-grandmother to Louis VII.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Incestuous red flag.
It's not incestuous. There is actually no
Icky
DNA.
red flag. Icky.
This is the most incesty non-incest I've ever
Most
seen.
times we've said incest in an episode, and that honestly is a record for us.
It is. It really is.
Red flag.
What a wild effing ride. No wonder these two had such a dysfunctional relationship.
Dysfunctional how?
Well, first of all, they had no real time to get to know each other or court, and the wedding was very hasty and not a big deal.
Within days of her dad dying.
Yes.
And Louis is sent on horseback, get there as fast as you possibly can before somebody else gets this good idea to marry her for her land and wealth and influence. And here we are.
It was the most no muss, no fuss wedding. We do still have her gift to Louis, which is a rock crystal vase. It's the only artifact that we can for 100% trace to her.
This is the 12th century. That's Pretty impressive.
Now, as Caroline has said, she was supposed to have been remarkably beautiful with long flowing golden hair, relatively tall, and
a nice figure.
She also was worldly and experienced and probably just exuded a very different kind of aura or vibe or whatever you want to call it than what was going on in France, because they were very dour, very overly religious.
They were still in the Middle Ages. It was very religious. It was very dark. And Aquitaine was the little bright light for the time.
It would be like big city New Yorker comes to marry some king, but he's a farmer.
Puritan.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten here yet, but are we going to talk about Louis' upbringing and why he was so weird?
Well, I guess you know what? You go ahead, take it away, because we're going to talk about how he was smitten by her. Go ahead.
So Louis was actually the second born of Fat Louis the Fat, but Fat Louis makes me think of Princess Diaries, which fits so nicely.
So nicely.
He was his second son, and so he was raised not to take over, but for the church. So he was raised in a monastery.
So he could one day maybe be pope.
At least cardinal. At least. So he was not expected to rule, and he was instead raised by monks in a monastery. He not only didn't have a lot of experience in terms of what leading a country, or at least a fourth of a country, or a group of vassals, what that looked like, he also was incredibly religious, and when his brother died and he was brought out of monastic life, he really struggled with a feeling of guilt and shame, because he thought he was going to be celibate, although most of them weren't celibate at the time, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
He thought he was going to be living a very closed life, and now he's told, have sex with this beautiful 15-year-old, and he's super uncomfortable.
Worldly woman.
And she is worldly, and like she's used to raunchy poetry.
Yeah, and she's getting a monk.
She married a monk.
Louis, of course, is smitten by his young queen, falls head over heels, but alas, Eleanor does not return the sentiment. She finds him dull, overly pious, and dare we say, unmanly. Her untamed passions are destined to clash with Louis' calm and monastic demeanor, like a storm sweeping over tranquil waters.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Were you drinking when you wrote that?
Yeah, probably.
Probably, yeah.
Very soon thereafter, not even a week, Louis Fat dies.
Oh.
Yeah, Eleanor and Louis rise to the throne of France at 15, respectively. And
5 days after they've met and gotten married.
yes, so...
And if you think he felt guilty about his brother's death...
He is very obviously unprepared.
Yeah.
There's no dad to help. There is Adelaide de Maurienne, the mother-in-law, who essentially, with her advisors, take control of the court and basically say, Eleanor, you need to sit down.
I mean, honestly...
I mean, I can see why,
I wouldn't let many 15-year-olds...
run my country?
Yeah.
Eleanor, accustomed to the vibrant arts and music scene in Aquitaine, finds the French court as exciting as watching paint dry. So what is she to do? She's newly minted, she's a queen, but she can't have any political machinations, so she attempts to recreate the splendid and cultured environment of her homeland in the Aquitaine. Eleanor commissions plays in Latin, encourages troubadours, and invites jongleurs to entertain her court, probably much to the confusion and disdain of the conservative French courtiers.
Yeah.
As we've discussed, France in these days was not exactly a hub of progress and intellectual enlightenment.
And it was definitely not the Louis XIV court that you're thinking in your mind. It is medieval and religious and buttoned up.
Yep. The French courtiers, set in their conservative ways, cringe at Eleanor's attempts to introduce courtly love and troubadours. They tolerate her for a while.
And she's queen.
But changes on the horizon because Louis, her husband, is growing tired of her unconventional behavior because they're bringing it to him. And quite frankly, he does not want to deal with it.
And he doesn't really want to defend it. He doesn't think it's okay either. So he's not willing to go to bat for her.
Rightly so. I think he's scared and intimidated by Eleanor. She's beautiful. She's worldly.
She's one of those people that's good at everything they try. Everything she tried to do, she did well. And I think Louis was not
that person. He was the kind that really had to work for it.
It would be very frustrating, I think, to live with someone who just naturally had this grace and ability when you don't.
So Eleanor soon realizes that her dreams of being politically influential are shattered. Louis expects her to be a dutiful consort and the mother of his heirs, playing no part in politics, and certainly not ruling her beloved Aquitaine. She does not like that, does not sit well with her. I mean, she had the spirit of a ruler, and a headstrong personality, and the intellect to back it up.
Yes, she did.
Trouble brews as Eleanor clashes with Louis's mother, Adelaide de Maurienne.
Especially when there were no babies popping out.
Adelaide, I will say, could have handled it better.
You think?
Because she shunned Eleanor in front of the court.
Sad flag.
Did not seem interested in helping or guiding or anything. Eleanor earns quite a bit of resentment. There are words exchanged in public on several occasions. The courtiers and ministers disapprove of her influence over Louis, because that was the only kind of power she could exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And Eleanor, undeterred, believes she's better suited to rule her lands than all of Louis's ministers combined. As if things could not get more complicated, they face their bedroom dilemma, and Louis is not enthusiastic about visiting his wife's bed.
Well, because he's a monk at heart.
She does undermine him at a lot of places, so she doesn't exactly make him feel manly.
Yeah.
In addition to all of the monkish tendencies. I could see where she would have different expectations. Like we said, she comes from the troubadour court. She's essentially been reading smut for the past however long, getting excited and ready to be a wife.
She's been singing smut.
Thank you, singing smut. You're
It's
right.
very troubadour.
It is.
Yes.
What is she to do? She doesn't know any other way, and he's not meeting. Yeah.
Plus, he won't sleep with her, and that's awkward.
Yeah. So Eleanor struggles to conceive for many years.
Hold on, I want to clarify here. It's not that he wouldn't sleep with her. They did sleep together.
Yeah.
But it was rare, and afterward he would go and flog himself.
Mm-hmm.
Pain and pleasure, and he really just
and the fact that he couldn't just flog himself on the regular and just be okay with a little bit of self...
Yeah, he couldn't do that. So Louis was incredibly repressed, which would have been very challenging.
And it's in line with the Roman Catholic Church's teaching that emphasizes marriage and sex for procreation rather than pleasure. Now, when Eleanor finally gets pregnant, she gives birth to a daughter, Marie, in 1145, after 8 years of marriage. It is a massive letdown for Louis, who was hoping, of course, for that coveted male heir.
And then he went and flogged himself, I'm sure, for the fate of a daughter.
In a moment of exasperation, Eleanor declares, quote, she's married a monk and not a king. And the royal romance takes a turn for the tumultuous, and it seems like the medieval power couple is in for a roller coaster ride of passion, politics, and unmet expectations, which I honestly think sums up this marriage.
Manage expectations. It is your mantra.
Listen, unmet expectations is the death of joy.
Okay.
And it just keeps coming. The archbishopric of Bourges becomes vacant.
Ooh.
Louis, ever the interested player in only religious politics, supports his buddy against the Pope's nominee, swearing on relics and all that jazz. Louis vows that Pierre will never set foot in Bourges.
Ooh.
Pope Innocent II is like, I'm not to be trifled with. I will smite you.
Oh, dear.
Slaps an interdict on the king.
On Louis. Mr. I can't have sex because I almost was a monk once. Okay.
He just casually forgot that going against the Pope was not like something monks do. Acting like a king for once, what? Now enter the love affair that sparks a war. Under the persuasive charms of Queen Eleanor, Louis caved and allowed Ralph de Vermandois to cast aside his first wife, sister to none other than England's King Stephen.
Oh dear.
Yes, maybe that's not the smartest thing, because do you know who he ended up marrying? Eleanor's sister, Petranilla.
Oh, it's that. Oh, it's this little...
It's that one. It's that one. Here's where the drama gets juicier.
Red flag!
Because this romantic swap triggered a full-blown war with Theobald II of Champagne, who, you guessed it, was the brother of Ralph's spurned first wife.
I always tell my son, Your job is to take care of your little sister.
The war raged on for 2 tumultuous years, culminating in the royal army occupying Champagne.
I appreciate you trying to defend your sister's honor, but to send men to die over this just feels... red flag!
Red flag, right?
Selfish.
Ralph and Petranilla found themselves in the crosshairs of none other than Pope Innocent II, who excommunicated their scandalous couple for their so-called legitimate union. And get this, 3 bishops had already annulled Ralph's first marriage, but apparently that was not enough to satisfy the papal gavel.
What's the point of it then if it doesn't actually work?
I don't know, but Pope Eugene, in the next act of this ecclesiastical soap opera, swooped in at the Council of Reims to legitimize Ralph and Petranilla's once scandalous union.
Wow.
This would be headline tabloids front page material with excommunications.
Can you imagine if this was like Kate Middleton and Will?
No, but yes. No, but yes.
Like, it would have been if Pippa
had...
Oh, yes. If Pippa had gone off and done something...
with Harry.
Super scandalous.
Louis, not one to do anything right, personally gets involved in assaulting and burning down the town of Vitry-en-Poitou. Casualties? Oh, just a casual 1,500 people who sought refuge in a church.
How did the church catch fire?
Louis set it on fire!
Like, to this day, I can't understand how that man did that. Because he was so, I can't sleep with my own wife to get a baby that the Pope is literally telling me to hurry up and get. But I can burn down a church full of people? Women and children!
At allegedly Eleanor's behest. Allegedly.
What?
Well, because she's trying to get it so that Petranilla can marry Ralph.
I don't think she insisted on him killing people.
I don't either, but that's how everyone else saw it. That Eleanor was this evil Aquitanian woman trying to get her sister into the royal court, trying to upend their society, and even though it was these abductions and these annulments and the bigamy was on both sides of this tree, she still got the brunt of it because she was other.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common.
The ecclesiastical powers that be were not happy, and trying to shake off all that bad karma, Louis decides to atone for his sins by declaring a crusade in 1145. Bernard of Clairvaux, the hype man of France in the Middle Ages, adds some preacher flair, and et voila, the Christmas Day crusade is in the works. And that is where we end today's episode, because next week we will hear all about Eleanor and Louis on crusade, the good, the bad, and the potentially incestuous.
Actually, next week we're going to hear about the Second Crusade as
right.
prep for all that drama that's about to go down. And that, my friends, is that. I'm Caroline.
And I'm Erika, and we are Pithily Yours.
This episode is brought to you by the Pithy Chronicle, LLC. The Pithy Chronicle is intended for education, entertainment, and non-commercial purposes. Any views or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. While we offer lots of sarcasm, this podcast does not offer any advice or services. Listening to this podcast may induce fits of laughter, unexpected distraction, or uncontrollable rage at the subjects, hopefully not at us. We hope you learned something today. If not, so sorry. Please be advised we are not experts in the following fields: medical, legal, financial, technological, thermonuclear engineering, submarine warfare, neuroscience, or cat husbandry. Thanks for listening to our little disclaimer. Just covering our history-loving asses. Bye!